All right, awesome. Jonathan Perez, thank you so much for joining us today in the Sports Capstone class. We usually start these off by having our guest speakers give us a little background, kind of, how they got to UF, what they did while they were here, and then post undergrad, what you were up to. And we looked at your LinkedIn and kind of saw your journey. So can you walk us through everything?
For sure. Yeah. So I born and raised in Miami. Actually transferred to UF, and then spent like 2.5 years at UF. While at UF, I did like everything within the sports journalism stuff, right? So it was like the ESPN radio. Jumped into that, as fast as I could. I felt that as a transfer student, I didn't have as much time as everyone else did. And so for me, I was just like, I need to get into any opportunities that I can, right? Just learn as much as I could as fast as possible. So did ESPN 850, did like even like some stuff like with Gator Vision, right? Like holding the cables. Like I just really wanted to like be a sponge and just kind of like soak everything in as far as like the TV industry, the radio industry, just kind of like the sports media industry as a whole. Did TV, did like the news track. Was able to get into the news track, and then from there also just volunteer wherever I could, right? So like covered UF baseball. That was like the first beat that I covered. I did that for TV. Very fortunate. We went to Omaha that year. We didn't win, but we were able to go to Omaha and covered it, and then went into football. Got that opportunity to do the football stuff, and yeah, it meant like you couldn't have like the same experience as everyone else in the fans and stuff like that, but it was so much cooler, to just be on the field and stuff like that. Really like to immerse yourself into that. That was like a different level. I mean, baseball is really cool, and all the sports at UF, right? Like they're all cool and stuff like that. But we all know that football is just like a different beast, when it comes to covering something like that, right? And so fortunate to do that. Went to the SEC championship game. We lost by a lot. And then from there, graduated. I stayed an extra semester at UF, got an internship there, TV 20. And again, I really just felt like I needed to stay maybe like one more semester, just kind of get, as much experience as I could. And so I stayed, got an internship there, and then graduated. And then when I graduated, it took me a long, long time to get that job. I wanted to be an anchor. I wanted to be a sports reporter, get into like that the TV industry. It took me a really long time. I graduated in December, and I didn't get a job, like a full time job. I didn't get the full time job until September, like the following year. And so that whole process was just like nonstop applying to companies, to TV stations and stuff like that. I mean, I had probably applied to over like, I don't know, I had a list of a document, and it was just like, it was like 5 pages worth or something like that. It was something crazy. It was like 150, maybe even more applications, right? And some of them I knew I wasn't. You never have this mentality, right? Like you always want to go in like positive and like, oh, I'm gonna get this job. But like there were some that like I knew, like, sure, dude, like you're not gonna get this one, but like I still went and applied for it because you never know, right? Like there were some like in Tampa, like some of the bigger market stations where I was just like, yeah, chances are I'm not gonna get this job, but it doesn't hurt to apply, right? Like it didn't hurt. Like all it did was, take a couple more minutes to apply. But anyway, so it took me a long time. I had actually worked, before I got the job. I had worked, one of the TV stations here in Miami where I had interned as well. So I was an associate producer, right? And so I had been doing like associate producer stuff, so a lot of behind the scenes stuff that summer. And then after that summer is when I got, I had applied for a job and stuff, and I got it. It was in Macon, Georgia, which is about, it's like an hour. It's like an hour and 15 south of Atlanta. And it was like full on like Georgia Bulldog territory. So that was that was fun. And they're good people. Yeah, a lot of the people there at the station, like even though they're Georgia fans and stuff like that, they're really really good people. Got to bond with a lot of them. Spent 3 years there. Loved it. Covered so many different things. Covered the Masters. Covered the national championship game, because obviously like we're covering Georgia now. So when Georgia played in the national championship game, I was able to cover that. And so just being able to cover different things, right? High school sports, huge, huge, huge over there. Um, just like a different facet, man. Like what like high school football is everything, in like these small little towns and stuff like that. And you get to really just grow. You really just get to grow. You get to push yourself. You get to challenge yourself because you're working on a timeline and like a deadline. And it's like, I mean, I know you guys have like assignments and stuff now, and got to get the assignment in before Thursday, before Friday. But something's different when you have like that TV deadline. And I'm sure you guys know, you guys do a lot of stuff. Maybe I'm sure like, all those experiences and stuff at UF that UF has to offer. But that deadline of like that news, when the news hits, at 5, 6, and 11, that deadline is just something different. So you really get to learn about yourself. You get to push yourself, you get to grow. So I spent 3 years there. And then again, I was applying for jobs, couldn't find anything. And then COVID happened. I was freelancing for one of the TV stations down here in Miami, again, where I had interned. My mentor was still there, and I had told him like, hey, I'm finishing up here in Georgia, but I'm just going to be down in Miami. Just wanted to know like if there's anything that you ever think of, I'm available type thing. And so they had an opening at the time. And so he was like, hey man, do you want to anchor the sports, on the weekends? And I was like, for sure, absolutely. And so I was able to do that for a few weekends, and then COVID happened. And then it shut down everything. As you guys know, like the world completely stopped, right? Like there was no sports. So I wasn't able to anchor anymore. And then it was just it was really bad. I mean, everyone knows like the situation. I mean, people were losing jobs and stuff like that. So like stations weren't hiring anymore. And then, I knew people who had been in the industry for, 20 plus years, they were losing their jobs. So it was a very tough time. I couldn't get a job, and that whole COVID, I mean, it was a long time, but I think I got a job again, 2021. Again, associate producer for another TV station down here in Miami. And so again, just doing behind the scenes stuff. And then eventually I made the switch. I still wanted to do on camera stuff, but I wasn't getting any of those opportunities. I had interviewed even before my current job, I had interviewed at a couple TV stations and stuff, but I kind of realized that sports, as much as I love it and everything, it's a grind. It's a real grind. And for me, and for like what I wanted to do, what I wanted to focus on, I was kind of tired of working the weekends. I was kind of tired of working on the holidays, which again, like those are all great things. And again, like all the sporting events happen on those holidays and stuff like that, and they're a lot of fun. And there's nothing wrong with wanting those things and wanting to work those events. But it's just a lot of sacrifice. And so for me, I was kind of at the point where like I think I kind of want to stop working on all these different things, like on these different times and different holidays and stuff like that. And so I kind of made the switch, found a full-time job, at a digital marketing agency where I'm at now. It was for a copywriter position. And again, I didn't really know that much about marketing, at the time. I know how to write. And so I figured, why not? And again, I was just kind of like a sponge, right? Like just learning like how I can write in this type of style for this type of medium. Basically what we do is like, we just do all the copywriting for small businesses, right? So it could be like gyms, it could be HVAC companies, lawyers, different things like that. And you're just kind of like writing in their style, writing in their voice, and you're just trying to get more more appointments, more bookings. Essentially, just trying to make them money, right? Like that's what marketing is. And so it's just like learning how to write in that space. And then I just kept doing it, kept staying in there. I mean, there were some times where I get to pitch videos and stuff like that too to clients, like some video ideas. So some of that stuff I was very familiar with. So I think the transition wasn't as hard. But I enjoyed it. And I stayed. And then, I've been able to stay there for now 4 years, and just kind of been able to grow in that position and stuff like that. But writing has always just been a part of it. I did a lot of writing, as you guys know, like a ton of writing in sports, all those different industries and mediums, right? For radio, for TV, even did some print before I got to UF and stuff like that. So writing has always been something that has been a staple as far as like, one of my strengths, what I consider I'm good at. It's just always been learning to maybe adapt and write in just different ways and for different mediums.
Well, thanks for sharing your journey. So tell me a little bit about what inspired you to write that piece on your blog that showed up on LinkedIn.
Yeah, actually, it was something that my job just asked me to do. It was just a piece that they've been asking a couple of the employees, if they have some free time, if they wanted to write it. And so one of my higher ups, reached out to me and was just like, hey, like I see you have like an interesting background. You did journalism and stuff like that. Would this be something that interests you? Just like to talk about your journey and like to talk about storytelling and like it's very important not only like for what you did, but like it's super important to like what we do now in marketing. And I was like, for sure. And so I don't know, it just got me thinking about like just talking about all these experiences and thinking about them as just like how they mesh. And then like that's like the easy answer, right? Is like storytelling. Like everyone knows like storytelling is crucial and stuff like that. But when you really think about it, it does so much, like whether you're talking about journalism or you're talking about social media, even marketing, like it's everything, right? Like it's one of the driving forces for why people want to learn about who you are, learn about your business, learn about your brand, learn about your team, learn about whatever you're reporting on. So much of the storytelling is just like a huge facet to what we do. And so this is one of those things where it's just like, do you want to do it? I was like, yeah, I definitely want to talk about it. Didn't know how, right? And it was just one of the things that you just start writing, and then you're like, okay, this is kind of like where I wanted to go with it. I just kind of share my experiences that way. Again, no, by no means am I like the expert, right, on like storytelling, or like I'm like the marketing whiz or anything like that. It's just one of those things where just like, let me just talk about my experiences, and see like how similar the two are, and just talking about my experiences in a new way as far as like writing for different styles and stuff like that.
No, it was really good. And I think it's important for everybody to know this, but especially our students, that there's a lot of transferable skills in what you're doing in journalism and communications that can transfer to a lot of different industries and everything like that. I always have different people on from different areas in sport and sport media, to come and talk to this class, but I always try and find someone that, was at one time, but also is doing something different in their life now too, to talk a little bit about, you mentioned it kind of in your open about that transition and what kind of things were you valuing at that time when you made that decision that kind of helped you kind of just really solidify? I was like, all right, it's time for me to transition out of this kind of sports world and doing something a little bit different.
Yeah, it was tough, man. Like it wasn't easy because again, like I grew up this whole time like thinking I wanted to be ESPN, right? And like SEC Network and SEC Nation and like I don't know, TNT, right? Like be like Ernie Johnson. And so like this whole time like growing up, and like there's still part of me that like kind of still wants that, right? Like you think about it, just like, oh my God, it'd be so cool. Like if that would happen. But again, it's just kind of like one of those things. So it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for me to do at all. And again, it was some of the things that I was valuing. Again, I kind of talked about like the free time, like on the weekends. I really want to spend more time with my family. Um, and then I kind of was thinking again, like me and my wife, we had just gotten married in 2020. So again, COVID, like everything blows up, right? And I get married. But I just gotten married. And so again, like we're thinking about like future on, like for a kid, right? Like if we're ever gonna have kids and stuff like that, what does our family look like? It's like I don't want to miss those moments. And again, that's so far along down the road, like when we were getting married, right? It's not like we were thinking about popping a baby out, but it's just like one of those things of just like you start thinking about it and your perspective starts to shift. And I'm just like, man, if I have a kid, like I don't want to work nights. Like I don't know. I just don't want to work nights. I don't want to miss, his basketball games or her, sporting events. Like if they're doing those things, like all that stuff happens at night. And like that's when I would be working. Also, like if they have stuff on the weekend, again, like I'm working typically the weekend, right? Like if you're the weekend sports anchor, even if you worked your way up to like a big market, you may not be like the Monday through Friday person. You might be working on the weekends. And so even if it's like if you're working on the weekend, you're gonna miss those opportunities, or it's a small team that you're working with, right? Like if you're doing sports, you had like your producers, you had your sports anchor, and maybe that was it. So there wasn't like a lot of people who could really like cover for you in those times. And so one of those things was just like asking for PTO. It felt like it would be almost like a burden to the people. And again, like you kind of have to prioritize, what you want and what you need in those spaces and stuff like that. But for me, I was just like, man, I don't want it to be a pain, like for me to ask for time off to see again future kid that doesn't even exist, but it's like future kid to see his baseball games or something like that. So for me, it was just more of just like valuing like the family time, and again, like it was hard. Like I had to sacrifice a lot, and so many people have been able to do both, right? Like they're able to juggle both, and kudos to them. But like when I was working in Georgia, you just sacrifice a lot because again, it's just what the job requires. I had to sacrifice missing weddings, like best friends' weddings and like bachelor parties and just like other events and like either like family vacations and stuff like that. Because again, like your time is limited and your vacation time is limited, and you're working the weekend. So like when everyone else can just go on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's like, well, can't really do that. Friday I'm working a football game. Saturday there's more football. And then Sunday someone's got to man the shows. So for me, it's just more prioritizing just like family things and just kind of saying like, hey, I had a lot of fun covering these things, and I was super, super blessed and super, super fortunate to cover these things. It's like I've kind of already had my run, if you will, my run at covering these really cool events. And so I just kind of wanted to prioritize, my family, my wife and stuff like that. And again, just this whole idea of like I would go and see my families on Sundays, have lunch, and eat at my grandma's house, and then after that, I have to go to work. And I was like, and again, like it was work, right? Like it's sports. Like I was doing like associate producing stuff, so it was like fun. It was cool. Like we were cutting up highlights of the Dolphins. They were losing, whatever, but it was like cutting up highlights of the Dolphins and like still like having a lot of fun, right? Like covering teams that like I grew up watching, like the Heat and everything, like the Panthers. Like I would leave on Sundays and go to a place that was still a lot of fun and like the culture was a lot of fun. I was like, man, I really really wish I could have just stayed at my grandma's house like with everyone else, right? Like not cut it short. And so again, those were kind of the things I was just thinking like, man, if I got out of this TV job, if I got out of this industry, I'd have a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more free time to kind of enjoy that.
So a lot of times students will come in to college and think, I got a direct path. I want to go do this, one or two things. I know I want to work in sports, whatever that may be. Where in reality, 9 times out of 10, there's a lot of, you know, things to the side quests. It's not a direct path. It's, zigzag all the way around to maybe the path that you want to get to, maybe somewhere else. What advice would you give students that have an idea in mind of what they want to do? Um, Maybe not sure how to get there, but also maybe some things to think about when they're headed down that direct path.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I would just say just try and learn as much as possible, right? Like from that specific industry or from maybe like from that specific field that you're trying to get into, but then like learn everything around it. Like so many times, like again for me, like I wanted to be on camera, and even when we were in school, they always told us like, cute, like you need to learn the behind the scenes stuff too, right? And like it was no problem for me. Like I wasn't just like, oh, I'm only going to learn how to write and I'm only going to learn how to speak in front of a camera. It's like, no, dude, like you got to learn how to shoot, you got to learn how to edit. And again, like I found things that I actually enjoyed doing. Like I love editing. I'm kind of a perfectionist in that. Like I would spend just hours just on Final Cut, just like editing, and just like, yeah, no, this soundbite's no good. Let's put something else here. And so I kind of liked that, right? But I would just say like just learn as much as you can from things in your field and from things outside of your field. Talk to people, like talk to your classmates, right? Like get inspiration from them. Like there's so many times that like I thought I was doing something the right way, and then I'll just look at someone else's work and be like, wow, like that's a totally different way of doing it. Like we had like studs like in our school, like going to do like amazing things and super super creative individuals, and it was just like, wow, like I didn't think of maybe even like telling the story that way, right? And like they're using the sound bites here or like the way they shot it, just give me inspiration, give me ideas. So definitely utilize your classmates, utilize your resources. Use Eric, learn everything you can about fields. And again, I think things that you don't even know like are gonna impact your field, right? So again, like I talk about like behind the scenes stuff, but like I don't know, like there's so many different avenues of like sports management or like business now that like even like social media, like there's so many different things. AI is huge. um so many different things that you guys as students could just learn. And again, like it's not saying that you have to be a master at every single one of those things, but it's just like learning like, okay, do I know a little bit, do I know enough, right? Do I know enough where I can dabble and then I can kind of like learn more expertise, in that area. There's so many different skill sets that you learn, and it's not just from being in one field, right? It's like from doing different things and learning from different people. I think that's like your best asset sometimes, is just like understanding that like the people that you are going to school with, they're the ones who are also going to help you out. Like it's kind of weird because sometimes you're competing for the same jobs and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, like they're here to help you out, and like they want to see you grow, and like you should see them grow too. So it's like always trying to help out, your classmate, your colleague, even when you guys get the jobs and stuff like that, because at the end of the day, like the people are what matter. And like you're just going to learn so much from people, and from helping other people and from like receiving that help from people, which I know it's hard because sometimes we don't want to ask for help. But like you have to, because just like there's so much more value from other people just because they think differently, right? Like they think differently, and like they see things differently, and sometimes it's like 10 times better than your original idea. And it's not just like, oh, I'm gonna keep my stuff the same, I'm gonna do it my way because I know. And it's like, nah, man, like they actually know what they're talking about. Other people have different paths to get there, and like their experiences and stuff like that are just as important. And so their experiences and what they've learned can definitely have an impact on you. So I would say, long story short, just like get involved as much of things as you can, learn about everything you can, and like just reach out to your people, and like learn from people, right? Like learn from their work, use it as inspiration, stuff like that.
Good. Any questions for Jonathan? I get another one. So you're in an industry right now on the marketing side of things, and it is, very comparable to some of the things that we do on journalism and broadcast and media side of things. What kind, you see a lot of probably interns and young people come into the company. What are some important skills? Maybe not necessarily like hard skills, but some soft skills that really stand out when you see some of these successful younger folks coming into the industry.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think some of the soft skills, again, it could just be like listening, right? Like really just like listening to what people have to say, taking notes, not being afraid to voice your opinion. I think a lot of times, it could be intimidating. Even like when you're getting a job and you're like the new person there, you kind of don't want to go against the current. And I'm not saying you have to, right? But like if you have an idea that is completely different, you can pitch it out. So many times, like sometimes the ideas come from people that you don't expect, and I think that's a great thing. And I think a lot of times, even in my field now, like you know, we're labeled as creatives, right? And so a lot of times, like it's the creatives come up with the ideas and stuff like that. But there's been so many times where I've been in a room where someone who's not a creative, someone who's an analytic driven person, right? Like they look at numbers, or an account executive, even, they come up with these ideas. And again, it's just because they're listening to, or they have a different perspective. And so you ask them for their input, and like you can kind of see and stuff that everyone has value. So I think listening, not being afraid to speak up, show your opinion. I think those are the good ones. And I think just like taking constructive criticism, wanting to just improve every day, like putting your head down and grind, like there's nothing wrong with that. But also understanding sometimes too that you could be wrong, or like your work could be better. And just understanding like if someone is critiquing your work, it's not necessarily something that's personal. It's something that's just like, hey, like let's just try and do this to make the work better. So I think a lot of that too is just like understanding that like in order to get better, you may not have all the answers, right? And so again, it kind of goes into like the whole like look what other people are doing, look at like the bigger companies, look at other TV stations, like other reporters, or like even like social media teams, right? Like what are they doing that like we're not doing? Or like again, like how can our stuff be better? So I think just like learning to just like always wanting to improve on your stuff, getting constructive criticism, I think is super valuable and super important. And then networking, super huge, right? Just like talking to people. And again, like it's not being fake, but just like reaching out to people. And this is something that like I probably struggle with. But it's just like reaching out to people and communicating with them and keeping those relationships alive. Because again, like you never know when you're gonna need them. And again, like it's kind of a weird thing because sometimes you're asking for someone and it's like, I don't really want a job, but you're just kind of seeing like what's available. And again, like for me, it was like when I graduated, again, like sure, like would I have wanted a job in Miami? That would have been amazing. But like I reached out to my mentor and I was just like, hey, like if anything's available, just let me know. And he was like, well, yeah, like we have this opening. Like at first it was like an opening for an associate producer. He's like, yeah, like let's like this kid's gonna go on break for I don't know, 2 months. We need someone to fill his spot. Would you want to do it? And I was like, for sure. And so then I did that. And then eventually I left. I got my job in Macon. And then again, when I left Macon, came back down to Miami because again, my family's down here and stuff like that. And then I just reached out. I said, hey man, I just finished here. Don't know if anything's ever opening up, or like even look at my reel. What do you think of it? So again, just kind of like letting them know, because not everyone's gonna they can't read your mind. But like they know that you're available and stuff like that. And so you just putting it out there and just saying like, I just want feedback. I just want feedback. Like I'm not even asking for a job. Like I just want feedback or whatever. And them kind of just knowing like, okay, this is what this person wants. They're available. And then again, it was that same guy who's just like, hey man, we have something. Do you want to do something on the weekends? And I was like, absolutely. And again, it wasn't like immediate. It was like something that like 3 months down the road, he had reached out to me. So again, like you never know when that time's going to be. So just always like stay ready and just like always reach out to your people because you never know, like they may not need something in the minute, they may not need something for a month. But eventually they will. And you kind of want them to remember when they're thinking about those opportunities and those positions.
Great. All right, JP, really appreciate your time today.
For sure. Thanks a lot, guys. This was a blast. Eric, appreciate you so much, man.
All right. It's great to see you. Take care. Keep in touch. Okay.
Likewise. We'll do. Later,
All right.
guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.